What an incredible lineup of speakers we had for Session 3, Why We Need Satire for a Healthy Democracy. Humorist Dan Ilic, known for his award-winning podcast A Rational Fear, stepped into the role of moderator to lead this impressive panel, which consisted of John Delmenico, editor of The Chaser and local Canberra resident, Melbourne-based Andrew J. Nash, serial entrepreneur, but more importantly, the technical advisor for HBO's satirical comedy Silicon Valley, and American Scott Dikkers, founder of The Onion, the renowned satirical media publication founded in 1988. So take a listen to these three Aussies and one American as they discuss the importance of satire to maintaining a healthy democracy.
So, ladies and gentlemen, may I welcome on stage Dan Ilic.
Thanks very much, Maury. I think the bravest thing I've done on my trip to Melbourne is wear a white shirt while having lunch here. So, as you can see, epic fail on my behalf. I was like, oh, white shirt, I'm going to look crispy. I'm not going to put any red sauce on it. Fucked it up straight away. All right, so why do we need satire for a healthy democracy? Well, there are many answers to this depending on who you ask. If you ask my mum, it's so I can have a job. If you ask the Liberal Party, they'll say that satire should be for Australian citizens only. If you ask the Labor Party, they'll say we need satire because for far too long, Scott Morrison something. If you ask Bob Catter, he'll punch you in the face for asking questions like that. If you ask the ABC, they'll say we don't need satire. We have the Weekly. That's for the comedians in the room. If you ask the Australian Electoral Commission, they'll tell you to ask it again, but add authorised by Dan Ilic, A Rational Fear, Canberra at the end to make it more compliant. Well, today we are going to be asking some of the world's best brains on the collision of satire, civics and technology and all the forces that are kind of shaping the reality of our world right now. It's going to be a great conversation and we're going to have that in just a little bit, but we have a little treat for you before that conversation, just to get our cognitive juices flowing. The first brain we'll get to suck on is a good one. He is one of the founding staff and the longest-serving editors of the satirical newspaper, The Onion, America's most trusted news source. If you don't know The Onion, I'm sure everyone in this room does, but this is for people who might be listening to this later. It is a satirical newspaper, and it is excellent. He's also the author of many books about creativity, business, comedy, and Donald Trump. He's basically a gift to any nephews who are stuck to buy something for their uncles this Christmas. It is my pleasure to welcome a man who shaped global comedy culture and unfortunately has inspired many people, some of them in this room, to take up satirical comedy. So please welcome for today's lunchtime keynote, comedian, filmmaker, joke writer, cartoonist, voiceover artist, entrepreneur, one of Wisconsin's favourite sons, Scott Dikkers.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I hope you can understand me with my crazy American accent. So why is satire important in a healthy democracy? That's what I was asked to pontificate on, and I'm going to pontificate. So when I think about this, I think about, is it? Is it important? Because there are many people in America, where I come from, who don't think it's important. They want to get rid of it. They want to sue the comedian who tells a joke about them, or they want to ban the show that makes fun of them. And so, maybe we don't need it. Like, maybe it would be better to have some sort of like government representative host the comedy shows, and they can just bloviate about how glorious and sexy the dear leader is, and that would be a great show. Right? I would love to see that. But no. When I look at satire and the role of satire in public discourse, I see it as a very historic thing, and but also at the same time very frivolous and silly. So it's got these two things: very important, very august, very silly. You go back thousands of years. Lysistrata, very important piece of satire, Greek play, where actors playing soldiers waved around these giant papier-mâché phalluses, because their wives refused to have sex with them, and so they were all backed up. And this was how Aristophanes communicated that war is bad. You know, it's just fun. It's silly. Move forward a few centuries, you get to the 18th century, and Jonathan Swift is writing a modest proposal. Again, just a silly little article about all these poor children, these starving children in Ireland. Maybe we should eat them. We should cook them and eat them. Wouldn't that be a great solution? They wouldn't be starving anymore. And then you jump ahead a little bit more to the 19th century. You have Mark Twain. Okay, so now maybe satire is, yes, it's frivolous and silly, but maybe it's getting a little dangerous. Because Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is a book that dared to suggest that black people should be treated as human beings. And that book is still banned in many American libraries, school libraries, etc. Jump ahead a little bit further. The 1970s, 80s, you get Monty Python in America. Now, when did you guys get Monty Python? Just out of pure curiosity. Because we got it a little late. We got it in the early 70s. Did you get it straight away? Okay, so similar. Their movie, The Life of Brian, is a great work of satire. And it goes after another edifice of authoritarianism, establishment, power, the Catholic Church. And they ignited a storm of controversy, people coming out to protest their movie. How dare they make fun of the respectable Catholic Church? What wrong have our beloved priests in the Catholic Church ever done? We should protest the satirists who make fun of them, not the priest or the edifice at all. And then you have The Onion and The Simpsons are founded in the same year, 1988. And we continue this tradition of doing silly, frivolous little, jokes and comedy skits and stuff that at the same time go after the powerful and go after the authority figures, the establishment, etc. At The Onion, we did some dangerous stuff also. We got in trouble with the governor of Wisconsin very early, about a year into The Onion. I'll tell you about that in a moment. We started targeting our federal leaders quickly. We were a very small circulation newspaper in Madison, Wisconsin, but we wanted to be bigger, so we started targeting presidents. And the first president we went after was, well, I should say Reagan was president when The Onion was founded, and then George H.W. Bush was president after that. And he came out against The Simpsons. He actually, back when presidents had scripts and everything they said was important, he literally called out The Simpsons for corrupting our youth. It was a corrupting influence on our youth. And so we made fun of him, but we were too small to get noticed. The Simpsons was on a major TV network. When Bill Clinton came to Madison, Wisconsin, where The Onion was based, we thought, well, now's our chance. He was campaigning. Thought, now's our chance. We got to get something on Bill Clinton. So we wanted to get a picture of him holding a copy of The Onion, at least, and then we'd make up some headline to make fun of him. And we had a little meeting, and we're like, well, how do we get to him? He's got Secret Service, like a whole crowd of, how are you going to do it? I was like, I know how to do it. We had an ad staff that sold local ads, and one of our ad staff was a very buxom young woman who used her charms to get local pizza shop owners and video store rental managers to buy ads in The Onion. So we told Michelle, can you just go in there? And so she walks toward the clump of Secret Service and through the crowd, and the Secret Service is like, eagle, bird approaching. And they're doing this, and the Red Sea parts. And she just goes straight up to Bill Clinton, and she hands him a copy of The Onion. We get this great picture, and we put it on the front page. So we're feeling amazing. We then went after George W. Bush when he became president. We did a number of ditties on George W. Bush, for example. He got his head stuck in a stairwell banister at one point in The Onion. And this is interesting because in the same year that The Simpsons had the episode where Homer became a super genius, I don't know if you ever saw that episode, The Onion did a story where George W. Bush became a super genius. And he was correcting the errors in the Fermilab calculations. And there's a thing with presidents where in comedy you always want to try to find a unique angle. And the angle everybody had for him was that he was kind of a dummy. And so we tried to twist that and do something a little different. We started doing a podcast where George W. Bush was kind of reintroducing the fireside chats of FDR. And in the first episode, he stokes the fire and burns down the White House. And that actually that program got us a cease and desist order from the White House. The first of many where we got in trouble with presidents. But so this stuff is all silly and it's all funny, and we're getting to a little bit of trouble. But was it dangerous? Was the satire dangerous at all? Well, a little bit. It was dangerous to us, for one, because we could get sued. The real problem wasn't necessarily going after the politicians. It was breaking the societal norms. So The Onion proudly had big swear words on the front page and in the main headline. This was not done in the late 80s, early 90s in America. You just didn't do that. Even in, kind of ribald publications, you'd do like F***CK so that, no one would know what word you're saying, and it was totally safe to get that out there. But the other thing we did was we ran a lot of nudity on the front page. And nudity is funny, especially male nudity. So we had a great front page story, one of my favorites, that we had a guy who was like our nude man. And whenever we needed a nude man, he would be our guy and he'd be like, great. He was actually a referee for local high school sports, but he loved being naked in his spare time and he had a perfect body for it. He was kind of stumpy, had a big gut, and it was beautiful. So, this little flap of penis sticking out under the big round gut. Beautiful, beautiful visage. So we put a story on the front page with his picture where he's like standing with some file folders in like a library environment with a couple of other people who are fully clothed in professional dress. And the headline was, Buck Naked Man Stresses Importance of Proper Schooling. And so it was just, for pure silliness' sake, we're just trying to be silly here. The U.S. Post Office noted that issue, you can't put X-rated material on mail that goes through the U.S. Postal Service. There's a $200,000 fine and possible 10-year prison sentence. So my partner and I at The Onion we had a little bit of a scrape. That was a very dangerous thing that happened to us. So we talk about a satire being dangerous for us, but not necessarily the politicians or the edifices of the establishment. They're fine. They're going to keep doing their thing. There's another group that satire is dangerous for, and that is, I don't know if you've ever seen The Onion or seen any of The Onion's material, like in your Facebook feed or whatever, but we have pictures of people in The Onion, and people often ask me, like, where do you find these people? Who are these people who are in The Onion? Where we find them is we would just go outside our office on the street, and we'd see somebody who looked good, and we'd take their photo and make them sign a blanket release form. And then so they're in The Onion as, area pedophile, local masturbator, whatever the case. And we have one feature that's called the American Voices. And it parodies that feature that you see in a lot of newspapers where it's just people on the street giving their opinion on the news of the day. And I thought it would be funny when we first started doing this back in 1990 to just use the same 6 photos of the same 6 people every week. And it'd be this in-joke. And readers would write in and say, you've made an error in the recent issue of the Onion. Those are the same people who were in last week. And we would just change the names. And I thought it was funny. It was a fun way to parody real newspapers doing that, because the sense I always got from real newspapers was they didn't give a rat's ass what the common person on the street had to say. They were just doing this as a stupid feature. So why not make it so obviously careless that we're just using the same pictures? The 6 people in those pictures had miserable lives because we found them on the street. They signed a blanket release form, and they were in the Onion every week for years, for decades. For decades. One of them was our UPS man. That's our private delivery service. I don't know if you know UPS. They almost fired him because of some of the incendiary things that he would say in the Onion. He had nothing to do with it, And I did meet one of them. I gave a talk at a conference one time, and she was in the audience. She came up to me after and said, "Do you recognize me?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I knew who you were immediately." And I asked her, "How has it been for you?" And she said it's been a lot of fun. Her friends always, make fun of her for the things she said or whatever. And she often gets recognized on the street. So she's a celebrity, and she enjoys her celebrity. But why? So I hope I've given you a little sense of the fact that satire is important. And I hope you agree with me that satire is important in our media. It doesn't affect the politicians. Like, they always say that thing about it's a corrupting influence on our youth. And we know that that's not true. We know they don't care about the youth. The same politicians who are rallying against the satire, coincidentally, are the same politicians that we're tearing down. And if you look at their record on the youth, normally they're the same politicians who are cutting school lunches. They're cutting, in America, what we call the SNAP program, what is it called? Nutritional benefits program, the supplemental nutritional assistance program. And they're fine just throwing kids to the wolves. Well, I should say the one area that they're very interested in when it comes to kids is taking them to a private island, and then there's a trap door where they can drop them after. You guys, I hope you haven't heard of the trap door. Lily, I know you've heard of it. So we know that's total bunk. They just don't like being made fun of. And how absurd is that? How ridiculous is that? They always want to project strength. They're strong men. They want to be seen as super tough. A lot of these tyrannical leaders that we're seeing as fascism rises around the world. Can't they see that everyone sees that they're upset about the comedy? Everyone sees them going, "You can't make fun of me." What could be weaker than not being able to laugh at yourself? They're totally exposed. It's absurd. So I hope we can all agree that satire is totally important, vital, valuable, worthwhile, and that our leaders and the representatives of the establishments that we're making fun of, to hell with them. I want to get a little bit into the why. Why is it important? And to do that, I want to talk a little bit about the how. How is satire done? As Dan mentioned, I've written a lot of books. After I left The Onion, I kind of poured my brain out in terms of how do you make jokes? How do you do this? And so I'm going to, if you'll suffer me through this, just talk a little bit about the mechanics of how you put these things together. So let's go back to that earlier story I mentioned where The Onion got in trouble with the governor of Wisconsin. So what happened was we were just starting out and we hadn't really mastered the finer points of satire. We're just being silly and we're just being sophomoric. And we did an article that the headline was, Governor proclaims November masturbation month. And he was a very prudish governor, a very conservative guy. And I called his office to see if we could get a photo of him for the story. And I spoke to his press secretary, a guy by the name of John Hankus. And he said, "The Onion? Oh, I've seen you guys on the street. No, I'm not going to give you a photo. You're just going to make fun of us." And I was like, "Well, yeah, but aren't I entitled to a photo as a citizen?" And he refused to give me a photo. And it would have just been that boring photo of the governor that they get, where they're in front of the flag like this. And this is before the internet. This is 1990, 89, I think, even. And I figured it was the best I can get. Now I can't even get that. So what I do is I go to the local daily newspaper. And they have a whole file of photos of the governor. And they even have one of him at a podium going like this, which is much more perfect for the story. And they said, "Sure, yeah, you can use it, just don't credit us." And so I took this photo of the governor, and I was laying it out on the front page, and I thought, I know, just for fun, since I'm not giving the Wisconsin State Journal credit, I'll say special thanks to John Hankus. And so I did that, and that issue hit the streets. We were talking a moment ago about doing comedy as if you're going to go out in a blaze of glory. This is what we were thinking. See how much trouble we can get into. And so this issue hits the streets, and I get a very angry phone call from John Hankus, who apparently had gotten his head chewed off by the governor because he thought that he had given us this photo, and he demanded a retraction. And he said he was going to sue us if we didn't print a retraction. So, in line with going out in a blaze of glory, in the next issue of The Onion, we put a little box on the inside front page that said, "Correction. Last week, The Onion erroneously reported the governor had proclaimed November Masturbation Month. It was a reporter's error. He had, in fact, proclaimed it Sodomy Month. The Onion regrets the mistake." And special thanks to John Hankus for pointing out this mistake. We don't just go after politicians and establishment figures. It's important in satire to go after all aspects of the culture and of our world, things that we accept as kind of normal parts of life, because those are the things that are needling us. Those are where all the problems are. So The Onion, just like Life of Brian, we go after religion quite a bit in The Onion over the years. One of my favorite articles we did was Pope condemns 3 more glands. And I loved it because it was just so simple. And I also love it because it roused the ire of our Catholic audience. One particular, a little crazy member of the Catholic audience who cut out the picture of the Pope that we had in that article on the front page about 300 times from 300 different copies of The Onion and put them in an envelope. Now, if you think getting confetti or anthrax in the mail is creepy, open a letter that has 300 meticulously cut out, and he cut it out with his child safety scissors in his dark basement where he lives with his mother, and he spent weeks cutting them out, and it was just a subtle threat that you shouldn't make fun of our dear pontiff. And then we had another guy who also didn't like us making fun of religion, who came to our office and threatened to kill me. We had to get a restraining order against that guy. So there's a little bit of that danger I'm talking about with satire. Sometimes the danger is fun. Another edifice, another establishment figure that we go after a lot in The Onion is the Make-A-Wish Foundation. It's a wonderful charity. They're doing great work, but you got to go after everybody, right? Equal opportunity offender. One of our earlier ones that nearly got us sued out of existence was dying 14-year-old will get his wish. Will pork Pamela Anderson. You guys use that word here, pork? Yeah. Now you can. Now you know it. And we did it again. We were just talking a moment ago about our show that we did when The Onion first started doing web video called Today Now, which was a parody of a morning news, news and interest show, like a goofy, light-hearted news show. And one of the stories we did was about a kid who was bankrupting the Make-A-Wish Foundation because he had wished for unlimited wishes. And so we got this 12-year-old actor to shave his head, and he was very excited to shave his head bald, and hooked him up, to this set where he was in a hospital bed. And he was just surrounded by toys and gifts that had come. There was a baseball player in there signing a ball and giving it to him. This is like B-roll footage for the skit. And they detailed how he had made this elaborate wish list. He wanted like an F-18 Tomcat. He wanted a battleship. And the lawyer for the Make-A-Wish Foundation came on the show to do their little interview piece. Of course, just an actor we hired. And he said, our motto at the Make-A-Wish Foundation is a promise made is a promise kept. So, we got to keep giving this kid the stuff. We hired a crack legal team to try to get out of the contract. The kid wished away our legal team. And so this sort of thing happened a great deal. But I want to focus on a book that Dan mentioned that I wrote in 2015 called Trump's America. Buy this book and Mexico will pay for it. It was an audacious project that I pursued with a team of writers that wasn't affiliated with The Onion. This is a side project that would be a beautiful full-color, graphic-heavy voter guide or a citizen's guide to what life would be like if Donald Trump became president. So we hatched this idea in the fall of 2015. He had just announced his candidacy, and everybody thought he was a joke. Everybody thought, he's not going to blast through the spring, It'll go to somebody legitimate like Jeb Bush, And we ended up finishing the book, and we released it in February of 2016, months before he was nominated or elected. And there are a few clues as to how satire works in that book. The book, as I said, beautiful full-color book with a lot of graphics and, funny Photoshop images. One of them was a chart showing a man-by-man comparison as to how and why Donald Trump is going to be superior to every president previous to him, breaking down all their faults and how Trump is better. Another one was introducing the Vol-Trump, which is the giant mech robot that is created when all of his Trump towers combine like a transformer and become this nation-destroying monster. It goes back to his childhood, and it shows you his birth certificate, and obviously it's packed with jokes. It tells you that he started fighting for America very early in 1951. He punched a Korean kid in the face. And he would have volunteered to go fight in Vietnam if they had let him shoot Jane Fonda. The book predicted a lot of things that Trump actually did. And this is one of my proudest moments, one of my proudest achievements at The Onion also, is when we would do a joke that we thought was outrageous and ridiculous and silly, and then it would come true. This happens way too often. But some of the things that came true that were in that book were Trump declaring that he would invade Canada and make it the 51st state. Put that right in the book. Another thing was that he was going to build a grand hotel on Arlington National Cemetery. I don't know if you saw it, just like 2 weeks ago, he announced plans to build a giant fascist arch with the golden wings right over Arlington National Cemetery. Arguably worse than a hotel. And he already has the hotel in D.C. anyway. We did a story about, I'm trying to think, the book was packed with jokes about how he was going to remake the White House press briefing room. He was going to create VIP seating for visiting Ultimate Fighting Champion dignitaries. He was going to have caddy and valet service. He was going to have an animatronic reporter that would pop up and ask flattering questions. And of course, he was going to have a stockade. All of which he actually has in the press room. You've seen it. we announced some of his cabinet appointees well before he was nominated and before he announced any of them, and we guessed all of them right. 2 Supreme Court justice picks that he put forth. Judge Dredd. We saw it happen. He got confirmed. The reanimated corpse of Evel Knievel was nominated for a Supreme Court seat. He got put on the court and currently serves in the U.S. We introduced some of his new government departments that he was going to create, such as I want to get these right. The names are important. The Department of Getting All the Oil. That was really in the book. By the way, the book is available. Like, you can go and buy it, and you'll see, published 2016, and I'm sure they can get it here by steamer ship in 18 months if you order it now. But some of his other government departments. The Bureau of the Trump grandkids' hottest babysitters. That was in there. The Office of Civil Rights and How to Stop Whining About Them. It's another important Trump department. Do you see some of the tools that the satirist uses to make authority figures and power structures and establishments look silly and brought down a peg? We use a lot of shock humor. That's one of the tools. By just introducing a little nudity, we had this beautiful segment in the Trump book where it was meet your new first family, and it was meet Melania, and then it was meet the new first penis. And it was a beautiful picture of this. I could tell you, in fact, I should tell you the whole story. I went on eBay and I said, I need a picture of someone's flaccid penis. Who will send me that? And a guy was like, I'll do it. And he sent me this beautiful flaccid penis that looked just like you imagine Trump's penis. And it was so fun to see it in this beautifully designed, that sort of presidential design. It's all the Gothic or sort of like Trajan is the name of the font, presidential lettering, and then the script lettering, and it looks very regal and everything. And it's just this hideous flaccid penis in black and white, like John F. Kennedy black and white photos for the whole thing. And then there was Melania Trump had a whole section. Do you know how in America the first lady, the president's wife, always has a signature issue? Laura Bush was literacy. And Michelle Obama's was childhood obesity. So they all have this signature issue they want to go after. Melania Trump's signature issue was closing your eyes and pretending you're not having sex with Donald Trump. And she was going to tour the nation and preach to young kids the importance of doing this. It was the Just Think No program. So that's a bit of shock, and that's fun. And then there's plenty of reference, observational humor, things from daily life that you plop in there, like getting a head stuck in a stairwell banister, for example. There's a ton of hyperbole, where you just exaggerate things to an absurd degree. And those are all wonderful tools of satire. The best and my favorite for this book in particular is irony, because that's what allows you to get away with it. That's what allows you to make someone like Trump believe that you're actually on his side, because the whole book was written as if from the point of view of an ardent Trump supporter and how great he was. And so Trump sees that, and it only goes one level deep with him. He sees that and he goes, oh, they're very kind to me. Very kind. I like them, or whatever. And that's because, we wanted to get sued by George W. Bush. That's fun. That's a great piece in the New York Times, wonderful publicity. We liked getting the lawsuit threat from the governor, wonderful. You don't want to get sued by Donald Trump, because he will not retract the lawsuit when all the lawyers say, sir, you can't win. You have freedom of the press. What are you doing? He'll keep going, and he'll just bankrupt you. So you need to do satire in a way that's subversive, where you can get away with it by making them not realize they're being made fun of. The things with Melania and the Trump's penis and all that, yes, those don't specifically use irony, and any idiot could see that and say, oh, okay, I'm being made fun of. But I know from reading the heat maps, you know what those are? The red maps on a website that shows where people click and where people read and scroll. I know that the vast majority of readers who read any kind of news don't read the articles. They're just reading the headlines. And I know actually for a fact that Donald Trump doesn't even read the headlines. He can't read. He doesn't read. His daily briefings have to have pictures, and not just any pictures, pictures of him. And then he'll look at them. But he can't read, and he won't read, and it doesn't matter. Someone from the Obama administration bought this book and left it in the White House so that Trump's people would get it when they got in. But we never heard anything about it. We also tried to get sued by Larry Flynt. You know who that is? Larry Flynt. They made a movie about him. He was the publisher of Hustler magazine, and the movie was The People versus Larry Flynt. And Woody Harrelson played Larry Flynt. He got sued in the 1980s, early 1980s, I think, for doing a parody ad that made fun of Jerry Falwell, who's this horrible right-wing preacher, the leader of the moral majority in America. And he won, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and he won 9-0. And they said, you have the right to make fun of a public figure. And we quoted that at The Onion all the time. Like, we kept it in our back pocket. Like, Larry Flynt, he made sure that we could do this and we could make fun of anyone. And so we tried to get Larry Flynt to sue us by doing an article. It was very similar to the article he did about Jerry Falwell, where we just wrote this incredibly horrible, shocking story of him getting raped by his mother in an outhouse, because that's what he had said about Jerry Falwell. Because we thought it'd be a really fun sort of comedy satire feedback loop if he won the Supreme Court case that allowed satire against public figures, and then he sued us for making fun of him. Would have been a really fun kind of meta comedy experiment. Word got to him, and he liked it. He loved the piece. But the thing about satire, and we're getting to the why, is you use these tools and you use irony so that they can't get away with it. And what does that do? What does that cause? Well, it doesn't really affect the leaders. Like, they're going to keep doing their tyrannical thing. The establishments are going to keep doing their thing. And maybe a tyrant's feelings are going to get hurt, but they're not really affected. Again, it's a little dangerous sometimes for the actual satirist, because they can get sued, and if they're sued by the wrong person who doesn't give up, they can be sued out of existence. And it can be tough on the people whose pictures are in the publication sometimes. But the winners, and the reason why satire is so important, is for the audience, for the readers. Because they're experiencing the same rise of fascism that we all are, but they get a little McDonald's fun meal prize with it. They get to laugh at it. And comedy is great. It's great to laugh at comedy. You know, Jim Carrey doing a funny face or Chris Farley falling down is wonderful. I'm a huge fan of that kind of comedy. But satire is a deeper, richer kind of laugh, where you point out, as the comedian, you point out what's wrong with society, what's bad about human nature, the way we structure our governments, etc. And if you can make people laugh at that, it's a much more deeply healing kind of laughter that gets you through it. Imagine if we couldn't laugh through hard times. I can't even imagine that. It's the best coping mechanism. It's just a wonderful salve for all the horrible things in life. And that's what satire gives to people, and that's why it's important. Thank you. And now I would like to welcome my cohorts.
Thanks, Scott. That was great. Take a seat. Excellent. Okay, let me take a seat too. Very good. All right, let's chat with our panel now. Joining me and Scott up here on the panel today, we've got someone who's spent 40 years in the world of technology, solving some of the business world's biggest problems with nothing but software and sheer charisma. He's bought and sold more companies than I've had solid bowel movements. He was also a technology advisor for 5 seasons on the HBO comedy show Silicon Valley. He describes himself as a hot mess and an energy ball. However, doctors describe him as ADHD. It's technologist Andrew J. Nash. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Is it news to you that you're ADHD? No. And despite running Australia's longest running news parody outlet, he's written more truthful headlines than The Australian. He's had more jokes read out in the Senate estimates than any other comedian in Australia. He lives in the Canberra bubble, so he's more than qualified to work out how to pop that bubble. And he's the editor of Australia's very own onion, The Chaser. Without legal representation here today, it's John Delmedico.
Hey, everyone.
John, when I asked my Patreon for questions for Scott, mainly, I did get one question sent in from Dom Knight, your boss. He said, he asked, how much in royalties does The Chaser owe The Onion? Do you think this was a ruse that Scott was going to be here to serve you papers?
I mean, I would hope not, mainly because that would mean The Onion's in a really bad state if they're looking for our money.
All right. So we're living through really interesting times. Do you have the microphone, Scott? Oh, good. Yeah, just checking. We're living through really interesting times of comedy. Back in September in America, there was a moment where I think a lot of comedians, and most of the comedians in this room, maybe a lot of us went, oh, fuck, that's not good. And it was Jimmy Kimmel when he was not making a joke about the death of Charlie Kirk, but making a point about how Republicans will capitalise on the death of Charlie Kirk for political gain. And that set off the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, to say a bunch of words about how it was disgusting what Jimmy Kimmel was doing, and that he would make these veiled threats to pull the licenses of ABC affiliates, and then Disney pulled Jimmy Kimmel off the air for a few weeks. And there was a real, oh, fuck me moment, where I was like, maybe this freedom of speech thing we've all thought that America has actually doesn't exist. And this is the first time where I looked at America and went, oh, it's a really fragile place. How did that moment feel to you as someone who's worked in satire for so long, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I did see it coming, as evidenced by that Trump's America book. And the thing that surprised me about it, I spent my whole life, like my mother really drilled into me the idea of what happened in Germany with the Nazis and how so unfathomable that was. That this is the civilized modern world, and you got to this point where you're just like herding people into camps and killing them systematically. And we're doing that in America now. The people who are dying in these immigrant detainment facilities, some people call them concentration camps, is ungodly. It's horrific.
Scott, we're Australian. We pioneered that, so I think
you guys know all about
credits where credit's due.
Yeah, but I mean, in all fairness, the people who were in your prisons did steal bread, right. So it was all on the up and up. But what shocked me was how fast it happened, because in Trump's first administration, he had all these people around him who were mitigating influences. But the second time, he was like, "Fuck this! I'm going to hire all my goons, and they're going to let me do whatever I want." And yeah, all those edifices, they're just polite society. They're just like conventions, so that they can all just crumble so fast.
John, we're in Australia where we don't have freedom of speech. How did you see that moment? Did you start to worry?
Well, I mean, it is weird for the Chaser because we've already, like, my bosses had that. Like, they've already, like, were pulled off air multiple times for jokes. One of which was about the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So
excellent.
They had a sketch called the Make-A-Realistic-Wish Foundation, which...
Scott, you're going to love this. It is so benign compared to the jokes that you described earlier.
But yeah, it's like we've seen firsthand already. Also, because people keep asking me, like online or in person, like, bring the Chaser back to TV, and it's like, it's not. We're pitching shows all the time, and TV networks have shown interest in a lot of stuff, and then it comes down to like, oh, but it's a bit risky, isn't it? And it sort of is like the point though. We can't like, but then also what was new for Charlie Kirk stuff as well was like, I made a Charlie Kirk joke the day that he was shot, and it was.
Can you give us the context? What was the headline?
Are You OK Day not going well at Turning Point? So, you know, Scott, Are You OK Day?
Scott, Are You OK Day is a mental health day in Australia. It's very popular.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's like a HR email gets sent out to everyone in the business, and then that's the business going, we've done mental health for a year, get back to work, overtime. So that joke was weird because it was like, that was what scared me, was because we've had controversies. The Chasers had controversies almost as long as I've been alive, and on that, I ended up on there were like Nazi forums openly posting about wanting to find my family and kill them. I got death threats on Christmas Day. There's a bunch of people who woke up on Christmas Day and by 9 a.m. were like, remember that joke that was said 3 months ago? And it's like, on top of, I think seeing people like Trump push that you can, fight back in these ways, and then obviously Elon Musk has turned Twitter into what everyone used to say 4chan was. And, we're in this new weird space where everyone in Australia would look to America and be like, hopefully one day we can reach there, and we see it crumbling there, and then we see around the world the whole people who in their bio free speech is really important, just constantly sending anyone who does anything that is against these fascist leaders, just immediately going after them and wanting to scare them in any ways they can.
Well, someone who's fled America, Andrew, what's it like coming back to Australia? Do you notice any difference in the kind of speech and civics kind of engagement here versus America?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I need to apologise for my American accent as well. Picked up earlier there.
So just for context, Andrew's spent 30 years in America.
Sorry, I'm dual citizen, lived in the US for 30 years here, and then came back home about 18 months ago. And love being back here. It's absolutely fabulous. Forgot how deep and funny this satire was down here. Kind of missed it. It was Monty Python was about here. I'm like, I can live in that zip code with postcode. I'm getting there. Okay. And then it was like, I'm back in Australia. Absolutely, everything's okay, but don't put it on the air, right?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that TV networks in Australia don't like is the moment you mention someone under 40, the idea of someone under 40 being on TV, they will shut down that pitch.
So none of my child porn bits would work. That's too bad. Pedophilia is big right now. You guys following the news at all, but we got to talk about it.
They've dedicated whole islands to it. In Australia, we talk about this idea for satire being healthy for a democracy. But Scott, America has all the late night shows. It's got some of the biggest comedians in the world. You've written dozens of books to keep the leaders accountable. How did America, with all this comedy and satire in the country, turn into an autocratic plutocracy?
Yeah, as I said, it doesn't affect them, And I look back at my life's work and the life's work of my colleagues in the business, and it seems like not only did we not help, things are so much worse after the Onion started and came out. So the only thing that comforts me is knowing that, the job of satire is just to give the audience something to cope with the terrible times, because people are always terrible. Throughout history, there's going to be tyrants rising and falling. The last 100 years, before Trump, we just got lucky. Yeah. That was a very rare sliver in human civilization that was pretty common person friendly, and there wasn't a tyrannical royal who appointed by God who could rule by fiat. The rest of human history is basically the God King who can do whatever he wants and kill anyone he wants, and everyone else is a serf. So that's the natural state of human beings.
Yeah.
And we can't get too comfortable when things are going easy. And like you said, it's an edifice that comes down in a heartbeat.
Andrew, you were just disgusted at that notion. Your face visibly went, "What? Is that the natural state of human beings?"
I'm flipping back between reality and okay. Maybe he's got a point.
I've got a question for you, Andrew. Stuart Lee was recently on Pod Save UK recently. Great comedian, and he was talking about how satirists often put their energy in they often misplace their energies. And while we're all making fun of politicians, politicians don't really run the show anymore. That the show is really run by the tech bros. And do you think that satirists aren't doing enough to make fun of technology or the tech bros, Andrew?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for all the material you've worked with,
I did write a book by Elon Musk.
Right. Right.
It was called "Welcome to the Future, Which Is Mine"
Right.
by Elon Musk.
So I think that's kind of the point. I mean, there's way more material in the tech industry, and there has been for the longest time.
Mike Judge is on it.
Yeah.
making that
There you
show.
go. There you go. And that was kind of what we did on Silicon Valley, where it was for the longest time. You had Hollywood, you had Silicon Valley, and was everyone like a truce? We won't poke fun at you if you don't poke fun at us, right? And it was the first time ever where we said, let's just do this. And Silicon Valley, where people say, is it a comedy or a documentary? And we said, yes. Absolutely it is. So there's actually a ton of material.
It felt like at the time Silicon Valley was out, it's been a few years since it's been out. 12, oh my God. It's over a decade since it's been out, but it feels like back when it was out, technology was still a benign friend. It was still it was still kind of, technology is going to bring us all together. Mark Zuckerberg was saying, we just want to have conversations with the world and start a genocide in Myanmar. But it feels like things have really changed in the last few years. Like technology has become, these tech companies have become the arm of autocratic governments to do worse things.
Well,
Sorry, you have to use your microphone.
Yeah, the way I frame it is, all my friends when I came back and said, what's the big difference between Australia and the US? I said, US is easy to explain. It's absolutely the best democracy money can buy. And the most important piece of that is, guess who's got all the money now? Tech industry.
Yeah.
Right? So, it's no secret you see Musk and Peter Thiel and everybody circling around there because, there's so much at stake. It's there. It's real. And in fact, there's as much power there in many respects as politicians and the other K Street money out of DC, which is all the other lobby groups that spend money there, right? So it's a big deal.
In the show Silicon Valley, Gavin Belson was kind of the tech oligarch. Who was he based on?
Wow, this is kind of one of my favourite ones. Loosely, it's Benioff, Mark Benioff.
Salesforce.
Yeah, Salesforce, and formerly Oracle. And
aren't you mates? Didn't you work together?
Yeah, I did work with Mark at Oracle way back when, and I got even with him for a thing he did down here where he came down to the conference and needed to do this. And there was another event later when I was running a company in Silicon Valley where, he stole all my sales stuff, and I basically ripped out his software and put a press release out the following day. So, roll up to the show, and it's like, we get to skewer people. And I'm like, I got one.
Did you ever hear from Mark about his portrayal?
Mark was not so happy with his portrayal. Mark Cuban was ecstatic. He thought it was the single funniest character that had ever represented him because it was Russ Hanneman, who was like 5'8". And Cuban's like 6'4" and a big dude. And, most everybody actually said, this is great. You actually portrayed this really well, and it's pretty funny. Because, I'm in the tech industry. We're crazy. What we do, and the stuff that actually goes on is insane. And the way it was actually all put together, there'd be just like a dinner where you grab everybody. And the first year, nobody wanted to be involved with it. In fact, the only fun part about that was Eric Schmidt, who was CEO of Google at the time. He decided to do that because he was connected to somebody else in the show, and I won't tell you all the connections, but he came and did a quick cameo, which was the thing with Kid Rock in the start. Did this ridiculous concert and then kind of walked out. And Eric's line would still be today, yeah, I've been to that concert. Just me and a bunch of nerds, right? Come season 2 and forward, Kara Schwissel was kicking down the door. She had to be involved. Everybody had to be involved. But you set them in a dinner room like this. They talk for 4 hours, fill them with alcohol. It's like, yep, we got all the material we need. It really wasn't that hard.
Yeah, I lived in San Francisco for a year, and that show really felt like an echo of that time. My favourite joke in Silicon Valley is the Gavin Belson signature edition server, and the G and the B made a gigantic penis, and I was like, that is perfect. I really enjoyed that. John, you are no stranger to having your work read out in Parliament. What is that like? And do you think it changes anything? Do you think changing minds in Parliament with your work?
Well, I've had it in a good way and a bad way. So the first time it happened, it was after Christian Porter had gone out while his court case is being dismissed because they came to an agreement. The agreement being the ABC had to acknowledge the thing that was already their defense, and Christian Porter would drop the case, and then Christian Porter was in front of the news saying, this is an embarrassing step down by the ABC, and every single news outlet ran that as the headline, even though it clearly wasn't. And so I ran the joke, ABC suffers humiliating huge fucking victory. And an ABC journalist had the gall to like that tweet alongside an article from, like a meme about, like a Blackadder meme, and a really funny long tweet from Ben Jenkins about, like, it was something along the lines of, like, I try to see the ABC, my pants fall down and everyone can see my pink love heart underwear, and I go to pull my pants back up, but then I fall into a dumpster. And, like, for some reason, a Liberal Party politician was, like, during ABC Senate estimates, grilled one of the ABC bosses on this journalist liking these tweets, which is great. Like, I'm glad that even though even though the Chase is not connected to the ABC anymore, I can keep the legacy of demanding that ABC get defunded because of the Chaser alive. It's really good. Then, like, the other time was an accident. There was, I don't know if you remember, but there was, like, conspiracy theories online that Scott Morrison wasn't cooking the curries that he said he cooked. And the media would, like, talk to chefs.
Scott and Andrew, Scott Morrison was the Prime Minister, and he'd like to do selfies of home improvement projects, including taking photos of himself making a curry. And it would turn into a big thing. The Prime Minister liked to make a curry.
Yeah. But also, importantly, he would show the ingredients at the start and at the end, and everyone would be confused about how bad it is. Also, the chicken was always, like, red, like it was clearly barely cooked. And I remember, like, there was conspiracy theories like, well, he didn't cook that himself because you don't get from point A to point B, and there'll be chefs on the news being like, you do if you really fuck it up. If you fuck up every step of the process, you can get from point A to point B. And there was a photo where Anthony Albanese, as opposition leader, was having a barbecue with Victorian Premier Dan Andrews. And I looked at the steak, and so no matter what, I was like, I'm going to do a joke parodying these conspiracy theories. And I looked at the steak on the barbecue, and there was no grill lines on the steak, even though they were cooked on a grill. And I was like, well, and the barbecue was not on, and I was like, did they actually stage this photo? So I got to get really specific with this joke. And then it turned into an actual QAnon conspiracy theory.
Oh, no.
So Dan Andrews, at a press conference, denied the allegation. And then in Parliament, during question time, Anthony Albanese also denied it. But both of their stories are completely different. One of them said he cooked it on a pan inside, and the photo was him taking it off the pan on the stove to the barbecue, and they're about to turn the barbecue on for the last bit, which clearly isn't how you cook a steak.
No.
And then the other person just said that they had cooked it on the grill the whole time. I'm like, neither of those stories sound correct. And it's weird that both of them had opposing stories. But it's really funny out of all the stuff that I've done about Australian politicians over the years, it's always fascinating to be like, which ones actually get under their skin.
Yeah. Because,
like, there's just so much, like, preparation done for politicians. I know in Australia, we hear from political parties that it still happens, even though we haven't had a TV show forever. They're still training politicians to be ready for if we prank them. Like, they're like, because it's like the Labor Party believes that the Chaser had a negative impact on Kevin Rudd's career. Like, there is actual fear that if we can get off a really good prank, it'll hurt them, because they don't realize that if the prank hurts them, that just means everyone watching it already didn't like the guy. Yeah. But, like, I think they just prepare so much for us to, like, as a disabled comedian, I go at them a bit about the NDIS because, right now they announced they're going to cut the NDIS to help increase defense funding. By the way, the NDIS is our disability scheme. Unlike in America, where you guys were like, oh, the one line we won't cross is making it that disabled people can't get wheelchairs. In Australia, our left-wing party is happy to take that stance if it means we can help America with war more. And so I think they're ready for that, or they're ready for us to go at them on climate change. They're ready for us to go at them for constantly doing whatever they can to suck off Rupert Murdoch. But the second that I suggest that that they're trying to save face, or the second that I make fun of them for a photo op, that's the ones that just get to them. Because I think I just think for them that those are the ones that hit their ego, because that's them trying to and all if you're getting into politics, you have an ego.
Yeah. Andrew, which of the tech bros has the easiest ego to make fun of?
That's easy, Musk. It's too simple. And actually, any of the PayPal mafia. Peter Thiel's probably right next to him.
Oh yeah, I was working at Gizmodo Fusion when what's his name? The wrestler Hulk Hogan launched a suit against Collider. Was it Collider? Gawker, and all that shit went down. So I was deeply interested in that particular story of Peter Thiel's ego.
Elon Musk once subtweeted one of my jokes.
Elon Musk?
Yeah. So when he changed the name from Twitter to X, he used to there was a point where he was replying. He replied to Mr. Beast, being like, "Please stop calling it Twitter. It's called X now. It's got a new name." And so I responded by writing an article that went viral called "Please stop calling it Twitter," says guy who dead names his own child. And then that became its own joke, and a year later the article went viral again. I think it got 250,000 likes on Twitter or something like that. It was one of our most popular articles ever. And shortly afterwards he started replying to people being like, don't dead name Twitter, and I'm like, that's so embarrassing, just pretend you didn't see the joke.
Scott, have you it's been a few years since you've been closely associated with The Onion, but do you give them guidance on which tech bros to attack?
No, I ran a training program at the Second City in Chicago that fed a lot of writers into The Onion, very similar to what I was doing when I was at The Onion. But I do want to say that Elon Musk poached a bunch of writers from The Onion. Do you guys know this story?
I heard it on a podcast.
He poached a bunch of writers from The Onion, including our editor-in-chief and our managing editor, and put together this humor publication called Thud. Yeah, because he fancies himself a comedian.
He thinks he's funny.
He's funny, and doesn't realize that people are laughing at him. Anyway, I'm embarrassed for the writers who went, because it was the editor and the managing editor and then a bunch of people that worked with them. So it was a huge team of people, and they got all this Elon Musk money, and they put together this Thud thing, which was pretty impressive. I went to the website, and it was very different. It was real world prank type articles and hoaxes that, how John Oliver does this thing where he mixes real life and comedy, where he'll encourage his viewers to go do something stuff, or to send a letter, or ratio some thing online or something. And it was very much like that, but it was also just super cool and techy and a very the kind of website that would win a Webby. Those sorts of websites are just overly technical, and they're really how do you navigate this? It's fascinating, And so as soon as Elon Musk figured out, they might make fun of me, he just killed it. He pulled all the funding and said, you guys are out.
Wow.
And they were just high and dry. And now they're just kind of scattered, trying to get work here and there. But it was a real tragedy. It was a comic tragedy, is what it was.
Andrew, have you had an experience with the PayPal mafia and their egos?
Yes, I have. I have. It's Peter Thiel's got a venture fund, and the funniest thing was going in there to actually go pitch. And this was not long after we'd actually done the show and a few other things like that. And it just it actually got around that he worked on that production. Right? Oh, God. And it's like, no, it's not my company. I'm not a startup. I'm just here with the pitch. The group, it's the only way I can explain the group of people is like, think there's rare earth and then rare air, and then there's just another stratosphere, and they live there, like permanently in their mind, in their life. It's real to them.
Yeah.
By the way, it's not, that they're like zero self-understanding, basically, and self-comprehension. I've never seen anything like it. I would work with a bunch of folks who made ridiculous money. We come into the office and I'd walk in, I'm like, what's that over there? And it's a couple of nerds who'd figured out that, well, we were looking at a particular four-wheel drive system in a particular car, and we're just trying to figure the physics angles and whether we could do that. So they'd run an experiment and built something out the side of the bull. I'm like, we're pitching to a client in like 2 hours and we need to close a deal. No, we're okay, we'll get back to it. So it's just literally oblivious is the only word I would sort of say. And it's just, and then the press totally aggrandizes the whole industry and what they're doing and changing the world. I'm like, have you been in some of these meetings? I mean, these people are nuts.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like for folks like Peter Thiel and you going into the pitch there, are you aware of his sensitivities? Like, are you aware?
Oh yeah, you're briefed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, you're briefed on what you can and can't say and whether to make eye contact or not make eye contact. I mean, this is, you're like, really, come on, you're taking a piss.
Right, really?
No,
what kind of stuff what's the weirdest thing in a brief that you've gotten from a pitch?
Not to touch the M&Ms in the bowl that's in front of the team member there. I'm like, why? Don't. Just said, don't.
All right, we've got 10 minutes. We might do some questions. Anyone got questions for our amazing panel here?
I've got one.
Maury, yep, you want to go?
Well, I want to create a new satirical newspaper. I'll call this one Splat, I guess. Do you have the numbers of those?
The numbers of fun.
Of the guys there. They got fun. Sorry, that was questions over.
Yeah, over here.
Thanks, man. Terrific session. We're generally assuming here that comedy's on the side of the good guys, but there's a couple of books come out recently in the States that look at the way in which comedy's fed into a lot of quite dark politics in America, kind of provided a gateway into anti-Semitism, misogyny, all kinds of extreme positions and so on. So I just wondered, I think the thud example was really interesting.
Which example?
The thud example.
Yeah.
But that was very short-lived. Nick Marks and Matt Sinkovich, one of his authors, the books, they talk about quite a significant comedy ecology where in podcasts and online material and so on, which is, I suppose they would see themselves as satirising woke.
I think that's really interesting. And in Australia, we've got a very own example. The rise of One Nation and Pauline Hanson in Australia
comedy
runs at the same time as they have been publishing animated cartoons that make fun of left-wing people. And I think the cartoons are funny.
Yeah, those cartoons are really annoying because like a lot of the takes are terrible, and whenever they try to do ones targeting young people, as a Gen Z person, it's always the funniest thing to me because that's where they are the worst. But it is annoying that whoever is writing the jokes understands joke structure. Yeah. Because like normally right-wing humor struggles. I mean, there was an interesting case where Dave Chappelle yesterday, at the time of recording, was said like he's like it's really weird Republicans seem to think that my anti-trans jokes are the same as their anti-trans rhetoric, and I'm like, it literally is. Like, it's not. I think a problem that a lot of comedians have with this, like, the Chaser has a go at anything mindset, but I think the one thing that you see popping up with a lot of comedians who are, there's always people as well who've been in the game for a while, and I think what happens is when you start doing satire, you get a lot of people blowing smoke up your ass. Because you start off being right, and then like, but what's tough is right now I posted a joke that was deeply offensive and bad and like hurting a minority group, I would get away with it. Like the amount of people like, oh no, you wouldn't. 100% I would, because a chunk of the audience would be forgiving. A chunk of the audience would rightfully call us out, and then overall, you just have this backlog. We get away with it, and I think when that happens and you start doing it over and over again, you still have this audience who tells you you're right, and then you're so used to being good at making that call that you then end up feeding in and empowering the people who you're supposed to be calling out.
Scott, we've kind of seen traditionally like satire being the home of left-wing politics, but that seems to be rapidly changing with new technologies and new platforms. How do you see the rise of satire in darker places of the internet?
Yeah, I mean, I think because of the rise of fascism, there's also a rise of kind of this bullying humor that that's how I would describe it. These comedians who are doing, anti-trans jokes or going after minorities or whatever. And I mean, I love going after leftists or anybody doing anything stupid on any part of the spectrum is great. But as soon as you're afflicting the afflicted and comforting the comfortable, you're not really doing satire anymore. You're just a bully, or worse, you're like a henchman of a bully in a classroom where you're making fun of the geeky kid because you know the bully's got your back and he's on your team. And that's humor to a lot of people. They think that's really funny. And to an audience, like they maybe aren't aware of the nuance, and they'll, because you could do a great right-wing comedy act at a Klan rally and kill. So you watch the video and it's like, this guy's killing, he's doing amazing. But that's just because you got a bunch of the wrong people in the wrong room. And to me, it's very clear. Like you can tell, oh, that's just a bullying person, because it's who they're going after. Are they going after the powerful, or are they going after the meek? Yeah. And as soon as they're going after the meek, it's just not funny. Like audiences don't like that. And so I haven't seen the show that you're talking about, but if some of it's good, I'm assuming they're going after some of the goofy mistakes, policy mistakes that progressives or liberals in charge are making. That you can do, and that's totally acceptable because that's making fun of authority figures.
And they do. And so I think... and
everybody should do that. Like nobody should get a pass.
But they also never really criticize One Nation.
And that's comforting then you're comforting the comforted.
Every time Pauline Hanson appears, she's a superhero, and they gloss over it. And
that's creepy as hell.
It's very weird.
That's like...
It's like South Park, except they don't talk about they don't criticize one group.
Or it's like the Riyadh Comedy Festival.
Yeah.
Where you don't make fun of the royal family.
Shout out to my man, MBS, one of my favorite... question over here.
Hi. Yeah. Thank you, panel. Super insightful. I've got a comment and a question. Comment to Andrew. Silicon Valley is one of my favourite shows. I have watched every season a couple of times over. It was kind of our saviour in COVID. And thank you for telling us who Gavin Belson was based on, because my husband and I, we thought it was like a mixture of like a few, and yeah, he didn't come up. So I'm gonna tell him as soon as I get home.
So I'll help you. The Vibram toe socks.
Yeah.
That was a dead giveaway.
Right. Okay. I'll have to watch again.
It wasn't the Blood Boy episode.
And it's actually how I discovered Jimmy Yang as well. So like, watching Silicon Valley, started following him on Instagram, saw his live show a couple of months ago. So kudos to you and the team. What an amazing show.
I'm just in the back room doing stuff.
Do more of those. My question is to John. You mentioned that the Chaser Group have pitched several shows to networks, and they're like, no, too risky. What are they deeming risky? Are they giving you the feedback of what's too risky? And are they also then suggesting changes? Is my first question.
Well, so it's gotten a bit weird recently because we've reached a point in time where the risk of a prank or something, they used to be just no to that, but now we've reached a point where the excitement of being able to go, we brought back the Chaser is exciting. But then one thing the thing that they consider really risky, especially in Australian comedy now, is one thing that the original guys want to do is do what Andrew Jensen did for them, but for younger talent. Also partially because these guys are dads in their 50s now. They can't be doing pranks where they can get arrested.
Yeah.
Logically you can't. And then they just they know so much young talent. They want to bring it forward, and so I think our pitches also slightly push it past that because they want to avoid hard. Like they want to avoid hard stuff, like hard jokes. They want to avoid taking strong stances.
Literally, the controller of ABC Entertainment has said that she does not want a satire, and that she wants family-friendly comedy. And anything that does not fit family-friendly comedy, it's out.
Is that at the risk of being sued?
No, that
Or
is a data play according to her numbers on iView. So it is like that's despite everything, social media can do great numbers, but unless it does the numbers on iView, unless people are going to iView to watch a TV show, they're not going to commission anything. That's why they haven't re-upped. Stephen could probably speak to this. They probably haven't re-upped Mad as Hell because of that. And that's why the weekly is weekly.
Yeah. And so, is there a world where it's self-produced and it goes onto YouTube or Twitch?
For the Chaser specifically, we considered that, and we tried to fundraising. But also, some of the young talent we have just went off and did that anyway, and so it also would we used to work with Alexa Vulovich and Alex Apollo, who now both have YouTube channels with millions of subscribers and pull in, and they're just doing Chaser style stuff from their garage. They have channels called Boy Boy and I Did a Thing. Their first ever video is, I think, the most Chaser thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And it was, so you guys know the theory that you can only get 3 haircut styles in North Korea? Those two guys tested that theory by going to North Korea to get a haircut. That's
And they do Chaser stunts. So
Yeah.
they took Friendly Geordies and they went to Pine Gap to see if they could get into Pine Gap. So Pine Gap's it's the CIA in the middle of Australia.
They also,
it's an American Army base.
Thank you.
They also once snuck into an arms convention for the Chaser. The first day they went with a briefcase full of prosthetic arms. And then the second time they just walked in and they spoke to a bunch of people at this secret arms convention about the future of weaponry, but also trying to get people to do a leggy like Ben Robert Smith, which...
Ben Robert Smith is one of our favourite war criminals, and he once he drank a beer from a prosthetic leg from someone he shot.
Thank you.
Yeah. But it's... I think they're...
One more question.
Yeah.
John, do you want to finish that thought?
I just think that there is a lot of people who want online stuff, but also the hard thing is a lot of people right now just don't have the money to support it. During the cost of living crisis, it's hard for us to be able to do productions while people are struggling to eat.
And the network numbers don't work out. So if you're not rating 1 million, they're not going to commission you anywhere, for any new TV shows, full stop. Brad?
Just very quickly. So who's doing the satire at the moment in Australia?
Oh, I think John's doing a great job on The Chaser. Batuta guys are doing a great job. Irrational Fear, when we publish, we do a good job.
The Shovel as well.
James Schluffel is doing great work at The Shovel.
The Shovel, right.
Yeah. And increasingly, you see great individual voices doing great work. In terms of look at Et Media, those guys are doing great. Lamestream, we've got someone coming in 10 minutes. It's very exciting.
Also, the Greg Larson Show, there's a podcast that's amazing.
Yeah, and then you kind of got, even though it's absurdist, I think Auntie Donna do some good stuff every now and then.
Yeah. So there's no organisation though, is there? Really, it's just all kind of guerrilla.
Yeah, there's no one
there's no union in Victoria for that.
There's no union.
The union movement died after the Accord, mate.
It's certainly from a perspective of a content creator, sometimes unions actually pay content creators to make satirical stuff. Yeah. So if we want to pitch ideas, we've got a funny idea because I work in that space. If I've got a funny idea, I'll pitch it to a union, or because I work in climate, I'll pitch it to the Climate Council or the Australian Conservation Foundation, or they'll come to me and they'll pitch a bunch of stuff. So Irrational Fear, we take commissions from the Australian Conservation Foundation and Climate Council. And for It's Not a Race during the last election. I've run a dirt unit in the digital space where we just do endless memes about elections. So we did tons of anti-Dutton content, tons of nuclear content, and we would commission comedians to come and make content for us. And during the referendum, we were so dismayed at the lack of organisation on the yes side for the Indigenous referendum that we organised a few months out from the referendum. I called up every Aboriginal comedian I knew, and we raised a couple of $100,000, and we just did as much comedy video content in support of the referendum as we could, because the Yes campaign were doing fuck all. Wow. So, when the people who should be funding it aren't funding it, and the right is incredibly organised with their digital content, particularly Advance and Atlas, they've got lots of fossil fuel money being funneled into digital channels. They're probably funding Gina. They're probably funding Carl Stepanovic's new podcast. Wow. So when you're seeing that in the progressive satirical space, which is meant to be making fun of these organisations, there's not the organisation around to fund that kind of content. It still comes from the ABC, which is the only place that actually makes that stuff. 9, 10, and 7 aren't going to be making that stuff.
Could I ask, just to follow the traditional old person's question, do you think young people are aware that there's satire?
Yes. I can see the Chaser's numbers. It is still the same as it was 20 years ago, where the majority of our audience is still young. There was a recent research paper that found that satire is the 5th most popular form of news with young people, and that's just always. Satire kind of actively goes towards young people. It's a good, I think, especially with jokes that explain what's going on, it's a good entry point for politics for a lot of people, and it's a much more accessible way to do it than having a really boring newsreader using a fake voice to try to talk.
Great. Well, let's we're going to wrap up now. So let's go down our panel. What bit of hope can you have? Can you leave us with to think about when we think about civics and satire, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I'm saddened and dismayed to know how difficult it is to do satire here in Australia without the law coming down on you or somebody else suing you, whoever you're making fun of, because you guys don't have an enshrined freedom of expression. I see a lot of hope in the multitudes, because now media has become totally democratized in a way that it wasn't when I got into it. When I got into it, you had to start your own newspaper and physically distribute it on the street and grow it over many years. Now you can just log into Instagram or start a TikTok or a blog on Substack, and you can grow really fast. And the people who I see doing that, those are kind of the bright lights. Somebody can just be out there, and then you're worldwide with your material. And so there's a comedian now in the States named Josh Johnson, who I'm a super big fan of, who's just the most incredibly hardworking comedian I've ever encountered in my life. And he's such a good writer. He looks at all the political issues that are happening and kind of approaches it from every angle he possibly can, and then picks the most interesting angle he hasn't heard anyone else do. And he does a new hour of stand-up every week.
He was here in February. Did anyone see him at the Arts Centre?
He came? That was great. That's great. I met him in Canada a few months ago. He and one guy travel around, and they shoot these specials, and they look like professional, multi-camera, multi-crew specials. There's him and a guy with a camera and 2 iPhones on either side, so it looks like multi-camera. But he's a host on The Daily Show in America as well, once a week. So he's an example of if somebody really works hard, they can get out there and they can build a platform, and they're just untouchable. They're their own boss. There's no networks. There's no middlemen to argue with, and the stuff is available in Australia. So if you never set foot in Australia and you don't have to worry about getting sued, you can be in one of those countries where they have no laws and just do whatever you want.
Andrew, what hope do you see for satire and democracy?
I think we've just been delivered the world's biggest gift in the technology industry and AI. I mean, the amount of material that's going to come through with the ridiculousness of AI and the things and the usages is just, it's beautiful at the moment. I mean, it's incredible. So,
What's the low-hanging fruit there for comedians in the room wanting to make fun of AI?
to me, it's the simplest way I can say it is, so many people just get into AI because they're asking me, how can I outthink or overthink the AI to ask the right particular prompt and words? Dude, just Google it. Like, you don't need AI for that, So they're trying to sort of overthink the machine. I think you're kind of missing the point. Yeah. It is the machine. Like, it doesn't have intelligence.
John, what about you? What's the final statement from the Chaser on civics and democracy in Australia?
I think the hope now, similar to what Scott was saying, is as much as the Australian media has tried and politicians have tried to shut down the existence of satire, I think what gives me hope, and the same with if it comes to civics as well, you see this a lot in activism spaces as well, is right now there are so many people who are standing up to do what they can, and also behind the scenes, like there's a lot of comedians who are trying to help younger comedians figure things out, even though everything's crazy, to make sure that it helps. And you see incredible new talent coming through, like obviously Vic and Jenna, Vidya Rajan. Like there's just it is such a the activism for civics and politics, and then satirical comedy, which is activism adjacent. It's just so scrappy that we're always going to keep fighting, and there has to be and when you see all these fascists, part of it is they all want to be the person on the top, and eventually they're going to start taking each other out. You see it already with Kerry Stokes and Rupert Murdoch constantly going at each other. They're going to collapse, and the scrappy ones are going to be the ones who are still around in 20 years' time.
Can't wait for the Ryan Stokes and Lachlan Murdoch battle off. It's going to be fantastic. Fantastic. Everyone, please thank our panel today, John, Andrew, and Scott, and thanks for having us.
And Dan Illick, of course. Thank you very much. As the gentleman, take leave. You may take leave. Yes. At ease, gentlemen. Thank you. Take leave.